Good evening, everyone. Let's start gathering people. Alex, go forth and retweet. Because I'm telling you to do so in a medieval accent, and therefore, you know you must do it.
All right. You just tweeted, right? Because I'm still looking for the tweet.
It was on Geek News. So.
Oh, fine, I'll just do a manual search.
Well,
it's not showing in my feed.
It should show up.
Bit of a lag, I guess.
Well, I mean, if you have a live Twitter feed right now, it should be there. I just barely found mine.
Yeah.
Well, that's not my fault. That's your Twitter app.
Yes, it is.
You want to know whose fault that is? That would be Ned's fault because he fails at being the guy in the chair.
The guy in the chair.
Yes.
It is indeed Sunday, Brony Man, 1989.
It is, but we're doing a bonus episode, so you can have some fun. We're going to be doing a bonus episode discussing the Netflix Castlevania. Now that we have all three panelists who have seen it, and we can give our thoughts. Even though two of us have technically already done that. But, well, we'll have some corrections. And also because, well, I want this retweeted as much as I possibly can get it, so I am going to put a link in the chat. Let's see if I can find my individual tweet today. Here we go. Okay, so this is the tweet. So copy link. Yes, there is. It's 4 episodes long for season 1. And here is my tweet that happened earlier today, and I want as many people retweeting that as possible because the word must get out that Destructoid sucks when it comes to journalism. When my podcast can report better on the Alex Bauer situation than Destructoid, a reliable gaming journalism place to be able to go. I wouldn't say reliable in the last few years, but when they consider themselves to be a reliable source of gaming journalism, and we did better than them, yeah. I want that known. So yeah, until we get everybody together and until it is 8 o'clock, then we're just going to keep this to like a Q&A and brief discussions of stories until we get started. So there you go.
Well, we had a double dose of death tonight.
Did we?
George Romero and Martin Landau.
Yes, I did see that. So it's the George Romero, right? So
yep,
Night of the Living Dead. Okay, because everybody was reporting it as George A. Romero, and I've only ever known him as George Romero.
Well, yeah, his full name is George A. Romero.
Yeah, I didn't know that. So
how do you not know that? Come on, I know that.
I never knew his
middle name. I've never watched
name,
Night of the Living Dead.
I've
only know what the A stands for.
Pieces of it. I've only seen pieces of it. So like, I know the concept and all that stuff. So don't immediately get on my case. But yeah, I usually stick to other things. By the time I was aware of the Romero movies, I was already done with zombies. I really was. Resident Evil and a number of other games had already done that for me. That sounds mean, but like Resident Evil was probably the only good series that I'd seen at that point that was doing zombies.
But shh, we can't say the Z word.
Like because the Romero estate will sue us.
Yes.
They're too busy suing everybody else that used the Z word. Oh, and
hi there. She's like, boosh. All of a sudden she runs in.
Get out of here, yo. Come here, say hi.
Hi. Oh.
Hi, baby Drac.
That was
This is what you
unexpected.
get.
She just
This is what you
comes
get for
busting
barging in.
in.
She's like, please don't aim the camera at me. She's like, don't.
Oh.
Oh, now she's a little camera shy. Oh, she's trying to figure out what all of this is. This is what you get for barging in. I've never seen Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, I've seen pieces of it in a film class, but that's about it. Much less the 6 bajillion variations that they did on it. I think there's actually one that's called Romance of the Living Dead.
Probably.
Maybe a porn. I don't know. Are you gonna smile for the people?
Show us those teeth.
Hey, tickle, tickle, tickle. Tickle, tickle. Nope, she's not gonna smile. Besides, you can't even see her under my banner. Let me see if I can fix that, guys. I'll disable it for now. There you go. Aw.
Oh, she's so cute.
Aw. No.
She's like, stop it.
No. There we go. You got a grin. You're honestly done with zombie films. That's okay. We all are. But Hollywood has never gotten the memo. Because I think we're getting World War Z 2, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. We're getting World War Z 2. Resident Evil movies are getting a reboot. Oh, crap. What's another zombie one? I had heard that they were going to do another I Am Legend a while back, but I think that got canceled.
Should we go have food?
You want to say hi to the people? You want to say hi? Hi. Hi. All right, you want to leave because you're getting shy? Like, I don't know if I want to be here. Okay, go ahead and take her, Mommy. Oh. There you go. For all the people who wanted the baby on camera, you get her at least once tonight.
Martin
Okay.
Landau.
I don't know what he's for.
He's been around quite a while. He's old Hollywood.
His name sounds familiar, but and unfortunately, I don't know every stinking name in Hollywood, and I know that that's such a crying shame for people. But you know, eventually, you run out of space in your hard drive. Martin Landau. He is an actor. Most recent stuff he's done: Entourage, Frankenweenie, The Last Poker Game, Red Maple Leaf. He was the great Raymondo in The Simpsons. Finding Grandma Ivory, In Plain Sight, Without a Trace, Entourage, Billy the Early Years, City of Ember, The Evidence. Yeah, he's got a pretty big resume. He was in the X-Files.
Yeah. I think most people remember him for North by Northwest.
Probably. There we go. Okay, let me get rid of all this stuff because the more pages I have up, the more frustrating this is going to get. Hey, Romney!
He was in the movie. I've not seen the movie.
Mark Landau. So
Martin Landau.
Martin Landau. There you go. That's his spelling. Greetings, Romney.
Hello.
So check my Twitter because I want that frickin' story retweeted as many times as I possibly can.
Which one?
So Destructoid put out a story on the Alex Mauer case where it's very clear the reporter did no homework whatsoever and immediately took Mauer's side and said it was all of us horrible, evil YouTube pundits that were picking on the poor transgendered person. And it got so bad that when Alex and me actually just barely came back from the movie theater to go see Spider-Man because we hadn't seen it yet. And while we were at the theater, the story had been updated. Basically, that the Destructoid editor had come in and gone, oh, by the way, you should totally take this story as an opinion piece. And then I think made the writer of the story apologize to all of the YouTubers covering the Alex Bauer situation.
It's like that same time where there was that, I don't know, I think it was either ESPN or some sort of sports publication tried doing the same thing with that officer George Holtzclaw, who was convicted of sexually assaulting a lot of women, and it was specifically a lot of African-American women that were in the area that he patrolled. And this guy wrote this full-on piece of, oh, he went downhill because he couldn't get into the NFL and was like trying to make him look good, despite the fact that, you know, he sexually assaulted a bunch of numerous women, many of whom were underage. And yeah, it looks like one of those, yeah, just, ugh.
Well, I put out a tweet today, just like as soon as I read it, or I actually heard about it on Twitter first. As soon as I had heard about the story, I immediately read it, and it was so horrible that I actually tweeted out going, you know, I can't even remember the actual quoting of it, but that's why I have my Twitters that I can do. So nice to know my little geek podcast at GNRO can cover the news better than Destructoid can these days. And I put the link in, and I'm already getting some people who are positive, some people who are negative. It was just released that Phil Collins died.
Phil Collins just died?
Let me double check here.
When I heard Adam, what did you say? You said Phil Collins died?
It's in the chat that apparently Phil Collins died.
All right, that reminds me I need to find said chat.
There, we'll see if people have it. Martin Landau, actually Oscar winner for Ed Wood, so that's probably where people would know Martin Landau.
Also known for Mission Impossible, the TV series.
Yeah. Nope, not seeing it. So I will Google it. Okay, Phil Collins. He literally has a concert called Not Dead Yet Live.
It sounds like one of the celebrity death hoaxes. He's not dead.
Yeah. I Brody, man, I think you're off a little bit. Check your sources.
Yep. Do we need to bring all the way to punch said sources?
We could. I think he's on Twitch right now. So let me double check. What was it? Twitch.tv/Steamboat Taco. I think he goes under the new Twitter name.
Yeah, it's just whenever I hear Steamboat Taco, I'm just thinking, okay, how is that not a taco truck? And also, if it were a taco truck, Disney would probably sue it out of existence. Because I just imagine like Steamboat Willie, but instead of like on the ship, you just see him like making the tacos the whole like with the. I need to animate that. Problem is animation.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, problem is animation takes an eternity.
I think you still need to animate a few other things and music and all that stuff. So just something to add on to the schedule.
Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff I've been neglecting that I need to get back to, like a couple of screenplays that I said I would have done by March.
And it's July.
Yeah,
it's okay. Although I'm backed up too, so it's not like I can sit here and play the high ground to you. I mean, my schedule's just as backed up as yours, probably.
Yeah, and at least in my defense, one of the screenplays I was working on, the idea just did not have as much mileage as I thought it did, so it was very much one of those, that this is not going to work as a feature, so I just abandoned it. It was basically me trying to turn one of my short films in high school into a feature, but then I realized, even the short film in high school wasn't that good. I should probably just, let it fade into obscurity with so many other things. That coincidentally, it was the short film that I tried recording my own J-pop for, so probably for the best. Yeah. I've gone out of my way to make sure no one will ever hear that song, but I know there's some people who still have it. and that worries me.
Oh, is this a super embarrassing song?
Well,
the one that I want. If you find it, people, you need to send it to me. I need to hear this. He's hyped it up so much. I must hear it.
No, you don't. You do not need to hear it. It pretty much is the epitome of my weeaboo phase. That was like literally both the culmination of it, but also the moment where I realized, what have I done?
Oh, that's hilarious. And already Brony Man's asking, what song is it?
You, Brony. It was a song I recorded for a credit sequence of a short film that I made in high school. And I took it out of the edit of the short film that's on my YouTube channel, mainly because I realized that it had nothing to do with it and didn't work. The best way to describe it, imagine someone with no knowledge of Japanese using Google Translate to translate the lyrics, trying to create a knockoff version of Cruel Angel's Thesis from Neon Genesis Evangelion. And you pretty much have a clear picture of what it was and why I got out of my way to make sure no one will ever see it again publicly.
But it is the internet. One crumb always remains.
Well, that's the thing. It never uploaded to the internet. Specifically, I headed that off because I put up my edit of the short film, so the high school didn't put up the original edit. And I tried actually getting my final edit put on the compilation DVD, but the teacher who was compiling the DVD, well, to make a long story short, we did not get along, so he put the older edit on it just to spite me.
Oh, okay. So in other words, he was le douchebag. Got it.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, we had creative disagreements. I think it was also because he was bitter that I wouldn't be in his Shakespeare adaptations, but at the same time, it's very much he's a decent person. He's a nice guy, so he is passionate. I did learn a lot from him. We just had creative differences that we couldn't quite reconcile.
Kind of like the I'm not going to say names, but when I did a live action radio drama and I was immediately invited by the director to join an official radio drama club or something like that. And the actors were supposed to give me said invite, and that never happened. And I actually approached one of them. I'm like, so how'd that club get started? Like, oh, we didn't start it. And then I saw in the paper or on the bulletin board of a scheduled meeting for it. I'm like, yeah, F you guys too.
And I know the feeling. That's what happened with me and a few other high school friends, because they were trying to start this film festival thing. They called it the We're Still Here Film Festival because it was just, oh yeah, people from this high school. For the first year, I was brought in as a judge because they couldn't fit me on any of the teams. It was a 48-hour film festival.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say it was not handled particularly well. Now, granted, I have some culpability in that I tried starting a discussion on the Facebook group we started, so that way get everyone involved, and then one of the people running it shooed me out, and then I just started noticing following years that I just was mysteriously not invited back.
Yeah. And at that point, the way I see it is like, if you're going to do something creative, then, you need to be able to get along with people. And if they're already not letting you be part of it, then they're probably not the people that you want to hang around with.
Yeah, that was very much one of those lessons I've had to learn the hard way over the past few years.
Yep. All right. Well, let's see. Remember when you used to have a radio show when you got your station? Bieber would be. Oh, don't even bring that up.
Bieber, Perry,
Every time I walked into that damn station, Bieber was playing.
Yeah. Definitely not the weirdest thing though. There was we had 2 or 3 people that tried to crash the show on occasion. One who wanted to come on the air to rap for no real reason. Yes. And then there was those 2 old ladies who wanted to tour the studio, but we were live and we couldn't let them in, and they just got so angry at us.
And then what's the? are we counting? Because I think you're missing one. Because we also had the instructors come in going, what the heck are you doing in here? And I had to go and I had to show them again that we had permission to be able to run that late and all that. And I even heard about that the week later. It's like, did you guys do your podcast or whatever? I'm like, yeah. Did they come to you? Yeah. You had permission? I'm like, yeah, I showed them we're on the schedule. And she's like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I remember one of the times we ran into one of the film department people. Luckily, since I was good with the film department, I was able to explain to them what was going on.
Yeah. Well, the thing I found interesting, though, is that after that, when new radio schedules would come out for new students, 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock kind of mysteriously vanished from that schedule. 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. Because I have a feeling that they just didn't like that the radio station was going on that late. So
yeah. Then they probably wanted to send the security guards home. Well, I guess by security guards, we mean the poor officers of the Utah Highway Patrol that got stuck with patrol duty.
Pretty much. They wanted to take one stop off their list.
Yeah, which I can't say I blame them because, I mean, yeah, given there's all the current events regarding police officers, but it really is a tough job, so I do feel for them. Although, one of the weirdest encounters I had was where I was literally riding my bike. I ran into two bike officers, like they were on bikes. What are the hand signals? And they didn't know the hand signals. It was like the most surreal thing. I'm just like, you're an officer on a bike, and you don't know what the bike hand signals are. Nope. I literally had to, it was so weird. I'm just like, well, this is Utah in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we are at 8 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get things started, everybody, and we will.
Are we recording audio?
We are recording audio because I am going to put it up on the feed as well.
All right, let me get mine started. Sound speed.
Mic check. There we go.
Rolling.
I had to swap mic, so I want to make sure mine is working. All right, so if you guys are ready, 3, 2, 1. Oh, baby girl's sad that we took her out. Oh, well. She'll get over it. Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News Reviews and Opinions. For Sunday? Yeah, we're getting together a couple of days later because we're going to do a bonus episode. So, a couple of weeks ago, the Netflix Castlevania series has released. You got season 1, which is a whopping 4 episodes long, and I know that at least 2 of us have actually done vlogs or reviews on the series, but I figured that, we've done bonus episodes in the past for things like Ratchet and Clank comes to mind, where Romney actually hosted that and he got people together for it. We could probably do one on this too, and there's also been enough people asking, okay, how would the Geek News panel react to this new series, especially given all of the coverage that we did for Adi Shankar and the fact he was producing it and Studio Frederator was in charge of it. And if you don't know Frederator, if you've seen Adventure Time, then you've seen their work. So tonight we're not going to do the full 2 hours. We're going to probably keep this to about 60 minutes. But we're going to go over the Netflix Castlevania Season 1 and give our thoughts on it. And we actually, so here's the thing. We 2 of us have reviews on it, and one of us doesn't, and we'll go ahead and introduce. But first of all, welcome to Geek News Reviews and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the week's events in geek. I'm your host, Adam Mickelson, obviously, and I'm being joined by my wonderful panel of fellow geeks, fellow YouTubers, fellow awesome guys in general. So let's go ahead and get the one other review that we have under his belt, and that is Stephen Romney of Studio Ghost Utah, of Romney's Reviews from the Shelf, and of his own review of Netflix Castlevania. How you doing tonight, Romney?
Doing pretty good. Also had to pay a visit to a movie theater earlier today for this. Unlike others who are going to see Spider-Man, I went to see War for the Planet of the Apes, so there will be a review of that shortly. But other than that, it's been an okay day, although it's been incredibly hot.
Yes, it has. Oh my gosh, it's been hot all day. And also, we are being joined by the Shadow Blazer himself, Alex Short. How you doing tonight, Alex? And you're the one that has no review on this, because I think up until about a week ago, you weren't even considering seeing this thing.
No, I was. I was always considering seeing it, but I just jumped on it a lot quicker when I found out we were going to do an episode for it. So otherwise, I'm doing okay. You probably can see I'm in my pajamas because I got to work tomorrow morning, so I'm literally going to bed right after this.
That's why we're also going to keep it to an hour, because, well, Monday's on the horizon and people do need to get up the next day. So And I love your little your subline, Bishonen vampires, because that's really what we were dealing with in this series. So to bring people up to speed, if you don't know about this Netflix Castlevania, Netflix approved a Castlevania series made by Studio Frederator, which is pretty much a script that has been pitched for years. And that is the script for the storyline of Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, where Trevor Belmont actually killed Dracula for the first time in the series' history. A lot of people will say, well, but there were prequels to this. They didn't necessarily kill Dracula. They were more just setting up the stakes. This one did. This one actually did have you kill Dracula as the first Belmont to do it. And we actually did have some pretty good news for this series. I mean, we had a good cast being announced for it. The one question that we had in our minds was Adi Shankar was added as a producer. And if you don't know who Adi Shankar is, he's mostly known for the Power Slash Rangers YouTube phenomenon that happened a while ago. Basically a darker, grittier Power Rangers. And I'm pretty sure you can find it still on YouTube. It's just not monetized or anything like that. But yeah, so he is actually behind it. And so the first season was 4 episodes and it's released. So let's get into it, because here's the thing. We're going to be talking spoilers tonight, but I'm not necessarily going to do like a plot point by plot point deal into the episodes. We're going to keep this as general as we can and give you guys our opinions and let you guys kind of figure out for yourself whether or not you want to go and watch it, or if you're just going to skip it until maybe season 2, which just barely got renewed for it, comes out. So I think the best way to be able to start on this is how did you walk into the Netflix Castlevania? What were your thoughts going in? Were you concerned? Were you thinking that this was awesome, especially since we had a trailer before then, and so that could either ease your concerns or it can make them worse. Me personally, I walked in as cautionary as I could. I did not have any opinions on it. I liked what I saw in the trailer, but it could have easily gone the other way when I actually saw the series. So that's me. Romney, how are you feeling? Because you are a Castlevania fan, so you kind of had the same apprehensions that I did.
Indeed, especially after the initial trailer. I know a lot of people were excited after seeing it, but for me, what tipped me off was the fact that the trailer was very choppy, and that raised the question of, okay, is it choppy because they're hiding the fact that the animation is kind of cheap? And, well, my suspicions were somewhat founded as I watched the show itself. But like you, I was pretty cautious going in. I was willing to give it a chance because Frederator is a studio that's actually trying to push animation beyond the niche it's been put into the West, where you either have mostly kids shows or adult comedies. Frederator as a studio has really been wanting to push the boundaries of what animation can do in the West. And so that gave me a little bit of confidence that, okay, it's Frederator backing it. And after looking into Adi Shankar's resume beyond Power Slash Rangers, I wasn't as worried because he had done shorts for things like Dread and a few other properties. So it's very much, okay, it's clear that unlike Power Slash Rangers, where you can tell he's not really a fan of Power Rangers, here there seems to be something a bit more genuine to it.
Yeah. And then, Alex, you're kind of walking in as the most blind here because you have only been introduced to the Castlevania series maybe a few years from here, because we've been doing Let's Plays on our channel, Draken Shadow. But how are you walking into the series after seeing trailers and all that?
Actually, I didn't see the trailers for this, so I just kind of went in pretty 100% blind. I don't think I had any preconceived expectations. Well, I kind of did. I figured it was going to be about Simon Belmont rather than Trevor Belmont. I figured it was going to pretty much follow the game's chronological order here. So I didn't have any real preconceived notions beyond just knowing Adi Shankar's behind it. But I'm like, well, Power Rangers, a dark, gritty style, just is kind of stupid for that. But like for Castlevania, that can kind of work. Yeah. So I just went in just wanting to see what am I going to get out of it for a 4-episode Netflix series.
Yeah, because the dark and gothic style probably would work with what Adi Shankar wants to do. It's just with Power Rangers that's kind of lighthearted. And so at that point it was not necessarily the right direction, that especially Saban Entertainment was not happy that they went in that direction, and we saw the results of that. So after seeing it, how do we actually feel about the Castlevania series? For me, it's it was enjoyable, but it was not enough. 4 episodes at 25 minutes each was just not enough. I wanted more ground covered, and unfortunately we didn't get that. And so now I've even said it in the vlog. And this is my biggest gripe, I really would have had no problem waiting for the 8 episodes that are going to be coming out in season 2 and having a 12 episode season 1. I thought that might be a lot better than just releasing these 4 episodes and making us wait for season 2. So that's where I'm standing on it. Alex, how did you walk out of seeing Castlevania?
Thought it was all right. I kind of understand why they probably went with such a short format. Unfortunately, this has been in various stages of development for over a decade now, so it's kind of you can't go in total guns blazing here. It's sort of, we got to really test the waters. Maybe they could have done that a little better with making more of a pilot movie instead of a 4-episode pilot series, and keeping us waiting perhaps another 6 months for the actual conclusion. I was pretty disappointed by the abrupt cliffhanger. I really figured, because when I started watching it and I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going to start with Trevor Belmont, then well, I guess we'll follow Trevor this series, and next series we're going to go to a different Belmont. And so I was really surprised that we didn't actually get the resolution. We didn't see him kill Dracula in the first 4 episodes.
I think they're pretty much setting up season 2 to continue Trevor's story. And that's kind of what I was wondering too, is like, could they easily like do, because here's the thing, when I looked at this, I'm like, you know, when season 1 comes out, it's going to be 10 episodes at least. This is going to cover Trevor's arc. And then if they do a season 2, would they dare actually go into another Belmont, or would they try and go? Because here's the thing, Trevor's story didn't technically end at Castlevania 3. There actually is a PlayStation 2 game that continues the storyline with Trevor called Curse of Darkness. So I'm like, oh, well, they could do that, or season 2 could be them going into Simon. Romney, how are you in this series? You already have a review out, but at the same time, where are you at walking out of Castlevania?
Well, speaking as a fan, I liked what I saw. I liked that they gave it its due diligence, but like it has its problems that did bother me. But at the very least, I found it enjoyable. And unlike everyone being like, "Oh, that's so short," I kind of liked the fact that they kept this first season short, because it made it manageable. And I also like the fact that each episode was 25 minutes long. They didn't front load it with an hour-long first episode, like, say, Daredevil or Voltron, which makes those shows even more of a slog. Here was just a case of, hey, simple 4-part installment, easy to fit into a day of viewing, especially if you don't have the time to sit down and watch all episodes in one sitting. And so I liked the fact that they kept it short, and I did like the stopping point they kind of chose, where they just had it where they end with Trevor and Sypha meeting Alucard, because, well, firstly, there's one character they've yet to introduce, which they'll probably introduce in season 2, which is Grant Dynasty, which I hope they change to Dynasty, which is the actual European last name he has in the Japanese version. It was just, again, Nintendo of America being Nintendo of America.
I'll admit that was kind of a beef to me, because at that point they end that episode saying our group is assembled, and I'm just like, you're missing Grant, because Grant was also part of the journey. But yeah, my guess is kind of like with you, is that they're going to introduce him in season 2, and maybe he's like a reluctant member. But that did actually like spark a little bit of beef within me.
Well, especially when you consider that with the way they've established it, they're not even in the main city where Dracula began his rampage. Because the main rampage happened in Targovishta, and whereas they're in the city that's on the way to Targovishta, so they're in Grezhit. So it's a case of, okay, well, there's still plenty of time to introduce Grant, because people kind of forget Grant, at least my interpretation of Grant when I played the games, is that he's kind of the thief, pirate sort of rogue of the party, because you have Trevor being the warrior, Sypha being the mage, Alucard being the black mage, for lack of a better term, since he's the son of Dracula, and Grant is basically the thief. And so, honestly, I half expected them to kind of introduce Grant initially as like a member of the clergy, because I saw like, oh, you have the clergyman who's skilled with a knife. Is this Grant? Nope, he's dead.
No, exactly. Well, the other thing that also came to my mind is like, because the dynasty, like when you go into the historical significance, is that the dynasty are actually also a well-known family. Like the series goes out of its way to say the Belmonts were well-known as well. But the dynasty have actual historical significance as being a prominent family in Wallachia. So at that point, it might actually be cool to bring him in, but maybe he's not a family that's as hated as the Belmonts. He could probably like open some doors for Trevor.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating, especially when you consider that Belnades. Like, it's fascinating just because when they were making the characters, the name Belnades, which is why it was sometimes translated as Fernandez, is because the original name from the region was supposed to sound similar to Fernandez, but it's since been lost to time because you have a Japanese studio learning how to pronounce this name as best they can, and so it's just through all of the translation and mutation, the original name has since been lost. And so that's one thing I'm hoping that they'll do at least at some point during season 2. And I think they've gave themselves a pretty good blueprint for it, where you're having to have them slowly move from town to town until they can get to Dracula's castle, basically.
Yeah. So now that we've had this introduction, let's get into the positives here. Like, let's get into the stuff that we loved, because we already technically are getting into some of the stuff that we love. Now, I have a feeling for Alex that's going to be a whole new thing, because again, he's not that much of a Castlevania fan, whereas me and Romney can add all of the awesome stuff from the series that they did. And one thing that I will give a major compliment to is not only the nods to Castlevania 3, but also nods to other games, specifically Castlevania Symphony of the Night. In particular, so basically the way I look at the 4 episodes is they're all introduction episodes, kind of like how Cowboy Bebop like literally starts off with Jet and Spike, and then the second episode introduces Ein, the next one introduces Faye, and then eventually they introduce Ed. That's kind of how this feels. And the first one was not devoted to a Belmont, it was devoted to Dracula. I actually like that episode, and in retrospect, I've watched that episode again since then, and I just love the lore that they poured into this, because, like, here's the thing, when Dracula's Curse came out back in the day, it was 8-bit. There's not really a way to tell that story aside from text boxes, and so this was a great way to be able to say, this is why Dracula waged war on humanity. And up until that point, we were just like, oh, Dracula's bad, so he just hates us all. You just have to take care of the bad guy. And they actually gave him legitimate stuff, which leaks into Symphony of the Night as we get to meet Lisa, his wife, and see her eventual death. And these were actually really powerful scenes that, granted, I think a lot more power could have been added to them, but the way that they were presented was still the best way you could have done it. Another thing I actually do like with the first episode is they established the dark magic that is associated with Dracula, and they support it later, is the fact that he uses machinery and he uses science in his tombs and all that. That was a really cool adage that they had. So that's probably the first positive that I'll give to the series, that we got some backstory into Dracula and why he hates the human race. Romney, what would you say would be a positive for you?
Well, aside from the fact that they actually took the material seriously, it was nice that they also incorporated that little backstory, because the whole thing with Lisa being burned at the stake is from Symphony of the Night. You specifically see Alucard confronted with that memory,
yes,
and kind of why he decides to side with humanity against Dracula. And so at least there was kind of a nice case of, okay, like, it helps establish things for people who aren't already familiar with the lore of Castlevania, with the fact of, oh, well, why is there this ongoing war? Especially considering that I'm glad they didn't try to incorporate some of the more confusing aspects of the Castlevania lore, especially with the stuff that came from Lament of Innocence. So it's one of those things where they gave it the due diligence. You can tell they did their research and then found ways to play around with different ideas that were only hinted at in the games, like the fact that the Belmont family were ousted from Wallachia initially because people feared their power. I liked how they expanded on that.
Yeah, and they kind of hint at that at Lament of Innocence. I would actually say there is a little bit of a hint of Lament of Innocence because they actually have seen the Belmont family as using dark magic, and well, that's not entirely inaccurate. They have utilized at least some level of dark magic in order to be able to hunt the knight. And so that actually does work out really well in this. The other thing too that I think also works out in this favor is they show how many ways that Dracula was actually tried to prevent Dracula from going down this course. In particular, like Alucard tries to stop him and fails. I want to say like the church also tried to attempt to stop him, or at least tried to use Lisa to be able to do that, and that failed. It's just like, oh wow, Dracula's just, as soon as he saw his wife dead, he was done, and you are all dead. I thought that was a really great way to be able to do that.
And that's another thing that I also liked, is that they made the church almost seem equally as malevolent as Dracula, because again, in the games and in just earlier stories, they made them seem like the goody goods, but here they kind of pulled from actual history and how people who were members of the clergy kind of abused their power, as seen with the Archbishop when he basically takes over Gregit.
Yeah, exactly. Alex, what would you consider a positive in Castlevania?
I think visually, a lot of the show looks nice in the art direction. A lot of the background, they get the Gothic imagery very, very good, just in the terms of color, in terms of the background art, you know, the Gothic cathedrals, the castle designs, everything about it. The show does look visually, I think, really interesting to me. I especially loved the whole bit with Trevor and the girl. I don't remember her name, actually. Sypha. Them kind of going through the catacombs. You know, you see the big gears, kind of the nice little callback to one of the games there. And you kind of get that and it does it in a way that feels subtle. It's not too on the nose. It's not too wink, wink. See, we're doing the games. It feels right at home. So I liked that. I thought visually the show is very aesthetically pleasing to me.
I would agree on that one. And in fact, I'll admit, when I saw the whole gear section, I immediately thought of you, because I'm going, oh my gosh, are they actually going to do this? They animated platforming.
Yeah.
Because they did. So really quick, we actually are doing this live, and we are doing it via live chat, or with a live chat. Unfortunately, YouTube has gone haywire, and so unfortunately we've lost the chat. So I'm just giving a quick update to the people who are reaching out. It's unfortunately not us, it's just YouTube, so bear with us. And just keep on watching, and eventually, oh, there we go, and it just barely came back. So, other positives that we want to actually mention for this, I like the fact that you brought up the Gothic imagery, because I actually would agree also. There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of imagery, especially the overviews of like the cities when you saw like Trevor walking into Gregit, that it really felt like this could have been concept art for a game. This could have literally worked. In fact, I would actually dare say there were a couple of still images of Trevor that looked like they could have been concept art for Trevor in like a 3D reimagining of it. So I like that concept as well. Another thing that I will point out that I liked is the cast. I've seen the cast get a lot of a bit of a beating right now, and I actually like the casting choices that they did. In particular, Richard Armitage as Trevor. I think he got the character. There were problems with his, and I will, because I've seen Romney's review, and you and me both have the same problem with delivery, but I don't know if it's him or if it's other problems. We'll get to that when we get there, because that's one of my negatives. But I like the performance that we got from Richard Armitage, James Callis as Alucard, the bishop. I don't even, does he ever get a name in there? The Archbishop of Gregit.
I don't remember.
I don't think he does. I think he's just the Archbishop. Tony Amendola as one of the as the elder. I liked him. So I love the cast. I think they actually picked actors that got their roles and understood what they were walking into. And I know, Rami, like you had issues with Richard Armitage, but and I kind of agree with you. I think it's more the delivery that's the problem. I think he gets Trevor, and I think he gets what they were trying to do with him.
Yeah, and so I understand a lot of it is like he probably did get an understanding of the characters, just between the sound mixing having problems and just sometimes having the animation not really match up with the expression that's coming across in the tone of voice and creating that disconnect. Yeah. Those were the kind of things that bothered me a little bit, where they try to have it be quippy and a bit more upbeat, whereas Richard Armitage was going a bit too subdued, and there was just that disconnect that kind of bothered me during mainly the middle 2 episodes.
Okay. Alex, any other positives that you want to bring up?
I agree. I thought the casting was really good. I thought a lot of the actors did very well. A lot of, you're right, a lot of it's, we're going to probably get into this, but it's hindered either by some of the writing or some of the sound design problems or some of the, probably I'd say also the voice direction is also a little bit poor at times.
I also want to give credit to Dracula. I think he did a really good job too. Who was it? Graham McTavish played Dracula, and that's another great performance in there. Even Emily Shallow, for as long as she was in there as Lisa Tepish, worked. I also do like a lot of the scenes that they tried to paint, specifically ones of, like, again, going back to the first episode, because I really do love how they did that. The scene where he goes back to the burned down house and the old lady is there and telling him what happened, because she doesn't know who he is yet, and just thinks that he's her husband, not necessarily that he's a demon from hell, and is telling the story and how sad she was, and the fact that Lisa was helping her out with her, I think it was like rheumatism or something like that, when she got sick, and then immediately just seeing the switch in him turn and becoming this demon from hell, and being so sympathetic. And the tears leaving, and the tears get replaced with tears of grief from tears of absolute fear of who he is. So I think a lot of scenes were really painted well as they needed to be in this series to be able to set the gothic mood. I mean, do we have any other additional positives, or shall we get into the negatives here? Because I think the negative list is going to be pretty long too.
I think we've pretty much hit a lot of the major positives.
Yep. Okay, let's do it then. So unfortunately our chat is still not up, but we'll, as soon as it comes up, you guys can give your suggestions too. Negatives for this series. I've said it in my vlog, and even though I do have a correction, because I have since listened to this thing on 4 different formats, on both of the TVs in our house, the main used TVs, as well as headsets. This is one of the headphones I used, and I couldn't hear the music whatsoever. When I actually took out some hardcore speakers, I had no problem hearing the background music, but man, that sound mixer needed to be fired. The sound mixes. So a lot of the problems that I think happened in delivery are not only with the director in the room with them, but also the sound mixer did a horrible job. The music is like I said, I even double checked on the TV. I had to turn the volume up to like 50 to hear the music barely. So at that point, it's like, oh, wow, we're missing out on so much more because of the lack of music on the TV. And then also the very quiet deliveries of some of these characters. In particular, so I love the Archbishop of Grezhet. I love what they tried to do with him, because I agree with you, Romney. He is the personification of how evil the church is in Wallachia. The problem is that he speaks like this, and it's very hard to hear him at times when he's making these dastardly threats. It's almost like the director didn't tell him to enunciate and project more, because that would have helped. The only time that he actually projects is when he's about to die, and even then he gets up to about normal voice. And so that performance could have been so much better if he had been like at regular volume the entire time and then eventually went nuts. But no, we had to deal with this because the church is supposed to be evil. And you're supposed to know this, even though you're turning your volume up to deafening levels to be able to actually hear what he's saying. Or maybe some people were just safe enough that they turned on the subtitles. Which, why should you have to do that?
Yeah, that definitely was a problem. I get the feeling that they may have mixed it on some sort of surround sound setup, but forgot to actually try listening to it through smaller speakers. Because I tried listening through earbuds, streaming it through my phone, through over-the-ear headphones, streaming it on the computer, and even through computer speakers, and it's just... There were just times where the sound effects or the music or just various elements would overpower the dialogue, and it got kind of annoying.
Yeah, I had to listen to this thing on like voiceover quality stuff to be able to eventually hear the music. Thankfully, I was able to hear the sound effects and the voiceover work as well as possible. But man, when that bishop came on, I was right next to the screen to try and hear what he was saying. Because here's the thing, like he's supposed to be like the second most evil person in this entire series. And he's just failing because of the very low delivery. Alex, what did you think about the Archbishop? Did you have a problem with his delivery at all?
Not with the bishop so much, but with Trevor a lot. I noticed a lot of the times he was mumbling through his lines. It's like it could be like one moment you hear him clearly, whatever, something, whatever he's saying. Then it's like something like that. It's like it was mostly with Trevor. I had the bishop. I thought was always very clear because the way the bishop character would speak, he always spoke very like clearly and slowly.
You got clear enunciation from him and clear diction.
It was always Trevor, I think, that I had the most problem with, and Sypha too, especially like when she mentions, I could pee in a glass and tell him it's beer, and I totally didn't know.
To snort like that. That was a good line. It was.
Yeah, I didn't even know what she was saying. What she said, I found out later. Because, like, yeah, the audio mix is pretty shoddy in this. It's just kind of. It's a lot of the characters don't speak clearly. They mumble a lot. It's just very poor.
So are you both in agreement with me that like the sound mixer is a problem, but also maybe the director in the booth was not the best person to do this? Because I'll agree with you. Like I love Trevor's delivery, and I think a lot of the bigger lines he does really, really well. But I will agree with you. There are points, in particular when he's drunk, he is mumbling insanely. Like it's so hard to. I get he's trying to do this and make himself mumble a little more because he's being drunk, but then it also carried into him being in the alleyway, an empty alleyway where I'm pretty sure there would have been some kind of echo, and nope, he's mumbling again. I'm at least happy that like all the cool moments with Trevor, we got clear delivery from Richard Armitage. And again, I don't think it was the actor's fault here because we're talking about a guy. We're talking about Thorin Oakenshield from The Hobbit. Okay, and no, like people have problems with those movies, but very rarely do I ever see him get brought up as one of the problems. So at that point, I don't think that was the issue. I think it was just the director in the booth did not give the proper directions here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were going to get additional stuff from Romney. Another thing that I will bring up is, again, we love the animation, and I love the Gothic style. But I noticed that you had this problem in your review as well, Romney, and I did too, which is some of the gore was a little unnecessary, and I actually think hurt the imagery. And the one that I will cite as an example is when they go to Greshit and they're on the outside wall. Like I said, you got this really cool overview image of Trevor going into Greshit that looked like it could have been concept art. And then literally right after that, when he walks in, they immediately pelt you with pikes of heads and what looks like, well, intestines being led around. And it's like, wow, I get that you were trying to add gore, but that was really unnecessary. You had already set the scene.
Well, that wasn't one of the gory elements that bothered me. the main thing that bothered me was during some of the battle scenes, particularly when when Trevor's saving the elder speaker from those two priests. It was those moments where, like, oh, the guy's eye got literally popped out by the whip. That was what bothered me.
That was a little weird.
Yeah, and the reason that bothered me, it wasn't even, like, let me level. Gore can work if it's done properly. Like, the scene that you're describing, I didn't have as much of a problem because it was already established, yeah, demons have been basically coming every night and terrorizing things, and so there I was willing to forgive it, where it's just like, okay, this is just, demons from hell trying to basically make people's lives miserable and traumatize them. But having the eye popped out by the whip, for me, the best way to describe it, if you're going to use gore, the gore has to have some logic to it. I mean, to use an anime example that even the people working on the series themselves claim to take influence from, Berserk, when you see gore in Berserk, it's not just random. You know what caused the specific gore. You know, like, oh, this weapon swung in this direction and hit this part of the body. Okay, that's why we're seeing the internal parts of this part of the body, because you can follow the logic of what damage is being done. But with fight scenes like that, it just felt like, okay, now you're just putting it there for the sake of shocking people. You're not actually thinking about the logic of the fight.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually think that was also a little bit disappointing too, because we got that gory element. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the first time he pulled out the whip, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the first time that we actually see him use the whip.
So this is like a pivotal moment that people have been waiting on, at least for 2 episodes by this point. We've seen the short sword, but now we want to see the iconic whip. And even though that is a cool delivery for it, it's also just like, yeah, we didn't need that, and it takes away from the scene a little bit.
Yeah, especially given, and again, the reason it bothers me is just because, okay, I get it that the whip can do damage, but that's like almost too. That's very much, you're putting that there for the sake of shocking people, because
do you
knowing
think,
how whips work.
Do you think maybe the reason they did that was because they wanted to show Trevor's disregard for the church and humanity as a whole? Is like he did not care about how hard he was maiming people?
Well, the thing is, we already got that with the fact that he already lopped off the priest's finger and stuff like that. So it was an unnecessary flourish. And even then, when you can think about it, if you're whipping someone and you're hitting them in the eye, the whip is not going to go into the eye socket, wrap around the vein and pull it out. No, it's just going to slash it. And so there, I'm just like, okay, clearly you're just doing this because you're just trying to shock people. There's no logic to it. And that's what bothered me the most.
Yeah, and I'll agree with that. But yeah, there was a lot of unnecessary gore that I actually think hurt the scenes that they were trying to paint. And I think Romney's put it perfectly. Gore can be done well, and it can set the scene even more. But and sometimes it can be an excellent garnish to an already splendid dish. Pardon my French, because I already know a lot of people will be like, "You just made me even more sick." But yeah, you can have that moment. It's just a couple of these times where it was like, no, it wasn't a garnish. It was more like somebody just threw an onion right onto your plate, and it didn't work out. Alex, what about you? Did the gore bug you at all?
Yeah, but I'm already not much of a gore person to begin with, so I thought a lot of the gore unsettling, but I have to understand it's a horror, so it's going to be gory. And yeah, Romney's really right, though, about the eyeball. I didn't think about that much because I don't know much about the anatomy of an eye. I must admit, plea ignorance here, but yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense that the whip would cut the eye clean out like that. That was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. And I'll even admit another negative that I have is they did so well in their research, but even I noticed like a little bit of a few hiccups in what they were trying to do. First of all, I'm going to call Grant a hiccup, at least for now, because again, when you get to the end of that last episode, it looks like they're setting up that this is the team. And so at that point, I'm going to say Grant is another one. But I actually think that the vampire killer is a little bit of a hiccup. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Romney, because in the last episode, when Trevor is trying to teach people to rise up and how to kill the demons and how to imbue the swords with holy water and all that, and then he strikes the demon, and he says the whip is consecrated. I think that's inaccurate.
Well, keep in mind, given that first, we don't know how faithfully they're following the Castlevania timeline, because, yes, it's Trevor Belmont, but we also recall Trevor was also established in the Lords of Shadow timeline, and for all we know, they're probably doing something unique on their own with this interpretation. And to an extent, it's not wrong, because when you look at Lament of Innocence, the whip is consecrated somewhat. It's very, in the context of the series, it's kept intentionally vague, because nobody's going to want to listen to a whole explanation of, oh, yeah, it was Leon Belmont sacrificing his wife and the whole whip of alchemy thing, where it's just easier to say, oh, the whip is blessed.
Yeah, because that actually was like, when they were saying like why the Belmont family was exiled and saying because of the dark arts, the first thing that came to my mind was the creation of the vampire killer.
Yeah, but that would also mean you would then have to allude to Walter Bernhard and Matthias Kronquist. Basically, a lot of other and again, I like Lament of Innocence, but let's face it, if you're trying to tell a Castlevania story for people who aren't familiar, that's all extraneous details. So the whip, Trevor saying the whip is consecrated, he's not wrong, and plus we don't know how faithful they're going to be to the timeline, which in and of itself has gone through a few changes, even under Iga's tenure.
Yeah. So, okay, I mean, you're making some good points, because, I mean, you could easily say that there were other things, other dark arts that Trevor or the Belmont family were involved in order to hunt the knight, aside from that, got them banned or excommunicated.
Not to mention that it may not even necessarily have been dark arts, when you consider that Lisa was killed for practicing medicine and basically abiding by science. Yeah. It may have been perceived as dark arts by the church, but may have been something completely benign that just helped the Belmont family fight demons, where it could have been based in pagan beliefs, like the fact of using holy water, using salt to fight demons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So even then, the thing to consider is, yeah, it's the church that said that they used black magic. Doesn't necessarily mean that the Belmont family were. It just means that the church said, oh, you use black magic, we either got to kill you or you got to get out.
Yeah, I found that, I also love that theme, is like, Dracula was science. So his evil was science, and I especially loved when, I think it was the first time they went into the tomb to go get Sypha, because he pulls her out and he says, "You saw what was in the tomb. You saw all of the machinery and the pipes and all that. That just reeks of of Dracula's lair." And I mean, you have a perfect reference as a viewer, because you see this stuff in the castle. You know that this is in the castle, and therefore you know why they are brandishing it as evil. And so I actually do like the fact that Dracula was basically science, and all this fantasy stuff, all this magic was the holy way of doing things, rather. But I also do kind of like that this, because we're all assuming when we play a Castlevania game that Trevor's on the cause of right. Well, but that doesn't necessarily mean holy. Because we didn't actually consider that maybe some rules had to be broken in order to be able to hunt the vampires.
Well, yeah, not to mention that it's also a case that, keep in mind, the church as established here is not even presented as a just entity, because they established that what the church is doing is that it's a play for power. They're trying to assert their dominance over the populace. So it's not even a case of, oh, they had to break the rules. It's just more that the way the Belmonts did things didn't gel with the message the church was trying to convey, and kind of basically made it harder for them to assert that control, to assert that dominance. And so that's the other key thing to consider here, is that, it's like, they probably did practice some fringe stuff. Whether it's good or evil, well, you have to really consider is who is the one giving forth that narrative. And a lot of it was the church, because they were the ones in power, and, well, it's very easy to demonize an entity that you believe goes against what you believe in.
Yeah. Given the themes that we've actually explained, Alex, since you're kind of coming into the Castlevania lore early on this, because, I mean, you know the lore for 3, but the additional lore that we're bringing up is probably news to you. Does that like affect your overall look at how they try to do things, how they try to portray the Belmont's excommunication, all that? Does it add or subtract to it?
I think it adds. I mean, I thought, a lot of people, and I kind of was starting to think that this feels like a very heavy-handed kind of anti-Catholic almost like, boy, Warren Ellis, you really got it out for the church, don't you? And I'm just like, I'm not wanting to jump to that conclusion, like that they're intentionally trying to be anti-religion, anti-Catholic or anything, because I have to also keep in mind, well, it is the 1400s, so it's not exactly a high time of enlightenment anyway.
Well, it's Romania in the 1400s, so even then it's bloody.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, okay, but a lot of the additional lore added on top of that does makes it a little bit more into perspective and a little more sense.
Yeah. And another, and we'll get into you guys' negatives, but this is another one I want to bring up and see you guys' viewpoint is. Another negative I would list is its length. I know that, like, because you guys like the length of it, but I actually was a little, and I even say it in my vlog, I was disappointed because I literally pumped through these episodes given the fact I didn't feel like I got enough out of them. I feel like we could have moved things along a little bit quicker and got them on the journey a bit quicker, or maybe even just had an additional episode of them committing to their journey and actually starting it. Instead, it was more of a, we have to establish the stakes, we have to show why Dracula hates and therefore wants to destroy us all, and then we have to establish Trevor in 2 episodes, then Sypha and Alucard got kind of rushed. So at that point, I will admit one of mine is length. I really do feel like we could have at least gotten another 2 episodes out there and had a little bit more to be able to work with to set up a better cliffhanger. And that's why I've actually said in my vlog is that season 2 just feels like the rest of season 1 to me, because we'll be able to establish a little bit more with 8 additional episodes. Now, obviously, Romney, you've kind of stated that you don't necessarily have that issue with the 4 episodes. And so why is that?
Well, and this just kind of goes into a major problem I have with a lot of Netflix shows where they basically design everything for binge watching. Like, oh yeah, we'll release this long series of episodes on day 1 because we expect people to plow through it. And especially, and this is a problem, like I mentioned, I had it with Voltron, and I had it with Daredevil and all these other shows, where like, oh yeah, let's make the first episode an hour long and give you the impression of, yeah, that's how long these episodes are. Because yeah, you totally have 13 hours to devote to a show in one sitting. Whereas here, I like the fact that it's shorter because it allowed, and the fact that all the episodes were the same length, because it allowed me to actually pace myself and still be able to do other things. And so I like it because it's very much goes against all the other crap Netflix likes to pull. And so I found it kind of nice that it was nice and short. And I like the fact that the next season's only going to be 8 episodes, hopefully following that same pattern, because I can actually pace myself and not have to devote like a whole chunk of time. I just hate binge watching in general, and so that's why I liked the fact that it was short.
Yes, I mean, you could literally watch these 4 episodes in under 2 hours. And look, I get his argument too, guys, but at the same time, I wish I got a little bit more. And that would have set me up a little bit longer so that I could wait for season 2. What about you, Alex? Was it too short, too long? Was it just right?
I feel like it was just right because, I mean, I also have to take into account that how long this finally took to get a series after so many failed attempts. So it kind of makes sense as sort of as a pilot series. My more problem is I feel like they should have just utilized the 4 episodes to do a short contained story and then begin a much longer arc when they finally come back with more episodes, when they've proven that they have a success on their hands. I kind of get it. It's unfortunately probably kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you don't recreate a more iconic story, you might not get the audience retention you want. So, it's just, I was fine because it was only about an hour and a half worth of viewing. And I feel like at least I wasn't having to like slog through more than 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Of it. So I guess in that sense I was fine, but more just kind of upset by the cliffhanger. I really thought they were just going to quickly resolve this one arc story in this one season and have the next season another story, kind of a sort of an anthology style. I figured they were probably going to go anthology with it,
which they technically did, because the whole story of in Greshit was the the sleeping soldier, and then we find out that it is in fact Alucard. And then they brought him into their cause. So you could say like that arc is resolved and now the journey begins, kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess you could.
And I see both of you guys' point of view, but I just wanted a little bit more. I needed a little bit more to be satisfied, and then I could wait for season 2 and have those additional 8 episodes. I wanted a little bit more, and I just don't feel like I got it. So any negatives that you guys want to throw out there that Castlevania did?
Well,
I found the story a little cliche, to be honest. It's very much the humanity sucks, and now I'm gonna kill all humans because I hate humans and humanity sucks. And yeah, I just kind of rolled my eyes. It's like I've seen this plot like 30 million times in anime, movies, and TV. It's like, give me something new.
Okay, all right, I'll give you that. Romney, what were you saying was a negative?
The animation. Now, keep in mind, I like the design, I like the gothic atmosphere, but the action scenes and the animation was choppy, like really, really choppy. You can tell that they cut a lot of corners, and it bothered me where they were clearly trying to go for, oh yeah, let's go for this last Airbender level of fight choreography when Trevor used the whips, but you can tell that there's a bunch of in-between frames that are missing, making it look really, really, really choppy. And although it's smoothed out for the Alucard and Trevor fight, it still has a lot of those choppy elements that it reeks of the fact that they had to cut some corners. And I'm just thinking here, if you're going to try to have this elaborate fight choreography, you need smooth animation to sell it. Otherwise, it just doesn't work.
See, and the Trevor and Alucard fight actually made me come to that conclusion, because there are moments in that fight too where it gets a little blurred and it gets a little cut corners-y in it. And then I watched that, and then I watched your review, and I went, okay, I'm gonna go back and watch these fights again. And yeah, the choreography is a little weird, and a little too rushed, in my opinion. I also didn't like that. I almost felt like the animators were afraid to use the whip, because Trevor. I'm not saying that Trevor shouldn't resort to the whip as his last resort, because it's a weapon. It's a weapon of power for him, and therefore it should be like the last resort that he goes to. But that short sword got dug out so many times where it's like, just pull out the dang whip. Oh. That's what we want to see you do.
I have to imagine the whip that's probably a good 5 to 10 keyframes right there.
Yeah, like things like the whip. I can understand why they probably limited that, because that, just speaking as someone who's tried 2D animation on my own, that thing must really be a pain in the ass to animate. That must really have been difficult, which is why they probably funneled a lot of their resources to the Trevor and Alucard fight. Probably not enough of it, but it's very much, I can see why they had him using the short sword and trying to do these other things, because that's literally a long, thin, spindly object moving in different directions. Try keep track of that when you're animating a frantic fight scene, and yeah, I can't say I blame them, but it very much is one of those, maybe funnel a few more resources to smooth out those moments, so that way when he does use the whip, it doesn't look so choppy.
Yeah, so at that point, you guys are kind of agreeing with me. They were very hesitant, very afraid to use the whip because of how hard it would be to animate. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would tend to go there too. I would also say that it felt like they were also very apprehensive with Sypha's magic, and I actually think that would be a little bit easier to animate than the whip. Well, and I wonder if they did that because of how rare, how taxing it should be for Sypha.
Yeah, and again, it kind of raises the same thing where if it's a solid object like ice, easy to animate. Fire, on the other hand, whole different beast.
Especially fire in this series, because I mean, already when you look at episode 1 and what they tried to do with Dracula sending his messages through pillars of fire, that was already a daunting task.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'll agree with you guys on that. So the animation is another major issue that we had. Maybe this is something that they could iron out. Other negatives that we want to bring up? That might be it. And actually, we're coming up on the hour. So as kind of a wrap up, since we do know that season 2 is renewed, or the Castlevania is renewed, season 2 is coming. 8 episodes are coming with it. if we were to tell the creators one thing to fix in that time so that we can improve the overall series, what would it be for you guys? And I might, we'll bring up others too, but I'm just going to say the sound mixing. It's the biggest problem to me in this series. Fire your sound mixer, get a new guy, get somebody who knows what they're doing. And also, if the director doesn't know how to handle a voiceover booth session, bring somebody in that does. I'm pretty sure Adi's directed before. We know because of Power/Rangers, and he had stuff before that. If he's the guy that has the experience, have him in the booth directing them. But if you don't know how to do it, because we need to get a new sound mixer and we need to get a new director in there to help with the performances that we're getting out of these guys. Because here's the thing, like, I like the performances. I also think we could get a whole lot better from them. What would be the one thing, Romney, that you would say to the creators to fix before season 2 comes out?
Aside from the sound mixing and the animation, the other big thing, and it was one thing I just thought of that I should have mentioned during the negatives, is tone down the need to undercut everything with humor. I mean, I get it.
Yes.
It is dark and oppressive, and I understand you want to have a little bit of levity, which is fine, and granted, it's not as bad about it as, the Marvel movies. Like, it had some moments, but, like, an example of where it was done wrong, where they tried to inject humor where it wasn't needed, Trevor trying to kick Alucard in the nuts. That wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
So stupid.
Because here's the thing. There are some moments that provide their own humor because it's dark humor. Alex brought up as an example the fact that Sypha is mentioning that Trevor's a drunk, and she's like, I could just pee in the bottle and he wouldn't know the difference. Okay? That's one of those times where that joke kind of makes sense because she don't like him at that point. Yeah, and she's not looking to benefit him.
And one that
but
also
I agree
works.
with you, yeah.
Yeah, and one that also works is when he encounters the Cyclops, and he's just like, oh crap, a Cyclops, right out of the bestiary. Because that felt like something that was natural and organic, but it's very much, let the dramatic moments be dramatic. You don't need to inject humor everywhere. Like, let the dramatic moments be dramatic. That would be the other big thing, aside from maybe plan out your sequences better so they can be a bit smoother. Don't try to have Last Airbender level of fight choreography unless you actually have the in-betweening studio to back it up, because I know it was a Korean studio that did the in-betweening, but it's very much, if you're going to either don't have that type of choreography, if you're not going to have the animation to sell it, or try to divert some more of the resources to beef up those sequences. Now, granted, we don't know how much money they're getting to create season 2. It could be more, could be less, could be more of the same, especially given that Konami's a bit of a madhouse right now. We don't even really know what's going on that front, but that would be the big thing, is let the dramatic moments be dramatic. Let some jokes can work if they're actually part of the character, but you don't need to force it into everything.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, like some of these scenes have provided their own form of dark humor. So at that point, you don't necessarily need to try so hard to get that humor forced in. I even found, I don't know about you, maybe second opinion from you guys, I found that last scene with the Archbishop to actually be like really hauntingly and morbidly funny because of the fact that the demon kind of reached in and went, let me give you a kiss. And I was like, this is really creepy. Ah! I like I said, I think a lot of these scenes paint the humor, so we don't actually have to worry about it. But then there were a lot of times where humor just got shoehorned in. Alex, what would be the one thing you would tell Frederator as well as Adi Shankar and the director to improve on for season 2 of Castlevania?
Pretty much, you guys both said it. It's just better animation and better sound design. Let's hope that now that they've proven themselves, they can come back with a little bit better resources. It's easy to understand. It's understandable that they didn't.
I'm not meaning to interrupt you, but you brought up story. Would that be an improvement as well? Because here's the thing, like, they've set up the characters. Now it's kind of a blank slate. Now it's like we go through the levels and you can tell your own story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's going to be much more they can change with the story. The plot and the scenario has been set up here, so it's just sort of, well, now they're going to find a way to write the video game levels and make that work in a in a series. And, well, I already think they can do that. I'm already confident they can do it because of how well they did the gear scene.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, like, I didn't think we'd actually get platforming in this thing. But we did. We got animated platforming. It happened. And I'll also just put out another one that again, this was a nitpick to me in regards to the music. And maybe Romney's on the same side as me. I don't know. Maybe Konami's not willing to work with you. Maybe they're just saying screw you. I would love to hear some renditions of old songs in this series. Like I almost felt like we should have gotten as the intro theme a rendition of Vampire Killer for this.
Yeah, honestly, when I watched the series, I thought maybe they were saving that for maybe season 2 after they have the full party. I was thinking, okay, maybe they're waiting to hold off until they're actually starting the siege on Dracula's castle. Because if I was the producer, I'm thinking, okay, if we're going to not use it for the first chunk of it, then that would be where we would actually save it, would be as they're actually starting to go through Dracula's castle. Would probably be a good thematic point to start, like maybe literally as they start the initial onslaught, have it with beginning, and then kind of throw in shades of all the other songs as they're actually starting to make their way to Dracula. At least that would be the way I would approach it.
I mean, like, technically you could have said with the introduction of Trevor, we should have gotten the I can't remember the actual name of the title, but the first level of Dracula's Curse, which is
the song's called Beginning.
Thank you.
That's literally all it's called.
So we could have had that moment, but I would actually technically say no, we haven't, because remember how Dracula's Curse starts, where he's actually mourning at a tomb or something like that, which I'm guessing means like we could actually see the crypt of the Belmonts. And him pledging his loyalty, and then all of a sudden, that might actually be really cool.
There's a place I'm gonna have to kind of disagree. I almost feel like with the way the tone of this show is, I feel like having the music in there would really feel out of place and just a little too obvious and a little too on the nose.
Well, there's a way to balance it out. It doesn't have to be completely overt. It could even just be a subtle reference to the soundtrack, much like what they did with Lords of Shadow, where they had subtle, like, kind of in the background, like, if you listen closely, you can hear it as sort of flourishes and references in the soundtrack. So it doesn't necessarily need to be overt.
Yeah, because, like, the only reference that I ever heard when I first played through Lords of Shadow was the music box playing Vampire Killer. But then I heard, like, no, there's, like, 10 other song references in that soundtrack, and I had to go listen again to hear it. Because I mean, that's the only one that's like straight over. It's what it's doing. As far as like, and this one is probably just going to be for me and Romney. But Alex, if you want to interject on this, I'm more than willing on that. Do we want? Because here's the thing. Like I said, we've established the characters. There's one missing, which we'll probably get in season 2. Do we want more lore, like, somehow fit into this? Like, I'm not saying shoehorn, but do we want additional games referenced? Because we're already getting Castlevania 3, Symphony of the Night, maybe a little bit of Lament of Innocence, but I would say I'm kind of in agreement with you, Romney, where it's not that well alluded to. Do we want additional games referenced for it?
Yes and no. I mean, if it's something that they get is like a wink to the audience that doesn't detract from the story, then yeah, that can work. But I'm not like, it's like, okay, if it's something you can work in, that's like, okay, it's just for the fans, but the story's allowed to keep moving, then yeah, great, put it in. But don't I say to the people wondering about that, don't expect like a subplot following Hector from Curse of Darkness or anything,
because that's actually a debate I got into, is like, I want to see Devil Forge Masters. I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. If Lament is not really all that openly referred to, I don't know if Curse of Darkness is going to be.
Well, yeah, especially when you consider that the Devil Forge Master thing, Hector's story doesn't take place until after Dracula has already been killed. So if they do a season 3 and decide to tell that story, great. But my main thing is focus on the main story you're telling first. If you can work in references and Easter eggs and allusions, great, but don't force it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't want to see like, because this would be the time when you could show Hector working for Dracula. I don't need to see that moment. I know that Dracula has hordes of minions. I don't necessarily need to know the humans are going to betray us and try to save their butts. I know that's going to happen. Alex, do you want to actually see more alluding to maybe other lore within Castlevania?
I'd say more. I'd be interested if they limited that to their own specific set of series.
Okay.
Rather than trying to squeeze them into this one. I feel like we're here with Trevor. Let's just focus on Trevor.
Well, and I like the fact that because already I was wondering if they were going to allude to the Belmont clan, but they go out of their way and say no. Trevor's the only, like, Trevor may not be the only one left, but it's really kind of hinted that he is. And so at that point, I was wondering, okay, are we going to get like baby Christopher Belmont at some point? And now I'm kind of glad we might not, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for him to be, you know, making babies during his epic quest.
Well, yeah. Plus, Christopher Belmont, that's not like Trevor's son. That's like Trevor's like great grandson, because Christopher appears 100 years after Trevor's story. And granted, that Christopher Belmont story, that would need to be a series unto itself because of all the stuff that happens with Soleil Belmont and so on and so forth. So, like, maybe if it's like if season 2 ends with Dracula's death, you can maybe have like a nod, a reference to the fact that Christopher's the next Belmont. But again, it's very much you have to kind of earn that. If it's at the end, then great, because, well, Dracula's vanquished, but not gone forever. But again, kind of back to the main point, you can do it, just don't force it, and don't slow the story down for the sake of it.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty much clear that we're all excited for season 2. At least to some extent. So, like, the next question I was going to go into is, are we actually excited, or did this not do enough? In particular, I am going to leave that question to Alex, because this is the series that needed to do the most for you to get interested. So, did it do enough for season 2 to be something you want to look into?
Yeah, it did enough for me to check out the second season that's coming, because at least, again, the second season will be short enough that I feel like, well, if season 2 doesn't really go anywhere, or doesn't progress in a way that I'm hoping it will, then at least I won't feel like all my time has been wasted.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, so let's go ahead and wrap things up, because we're already over the hour, and I didn't want to have this go too long. But that's basically our coverage of the Netflix Castlevania. If you guys haven't seen it already, now is the time for you to kind of make your assessments. I know we got a little spoiler heavy, but it's kind of unavoidable, and hopefully for those who didn't want to be spoiled, you guys will watch it later.
Yeah, plus it's not really spoilers if you're already familiar with the games. That's the other thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, you know, I hate to tell you this, but Trevor Belmont wins. So that's just the way it goes. So let's go ahead and wrap things up for the evening. Thank you guys. Thanks once again to the panel for being able to show up for this bonus episode, because this is definitely something that I kind of pushed. I really wanted to be able to talk about it, especially after seeing Romney's review. I wanted to be able to have that discussion with him, as well as getting a blind point of view from Alex. That was awesome. But if people want to check out all of the other content that we have, or that our channels have created in the meantime, specifically if people want to check out Romney's review of Castlevania, how do they do that, sir?
Well, you can always find me here on YouTube at youtube.com/StudioGhostUtah. You can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Romney'sReviews. And I'm also on Twitter at RomneyReviews. And as for a little bonus recommendation, if you're wanting to get a little bit more of a vampire fix, maybe want to see some of the things that inspired the Castlevania series, the recommendation I'm giving is the OVA Vampire Hunter D, which I'm holding on the camera here, because this is
great.
one of... Yes, because Vampire Hunter D, both for the games and for this particular series, was one of the numerous series that the studio making the show took inspiration from. Granted, the OVA I have is the one from the 80s, whereas they took more inspiration from Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. But if you want to get a little bit more vampire fix, if Castlevania didn't quite scratch the itch, that's a good OVA I recommend watching.
Yep. Alex, how do people get a hold of you for the reviews that you have actually put out? Also, possibly, like, are you going to be doing some kind of a review for the Netflix Castlevania on your channel?
I'm going to already go ahead and say, unfortunately, if anybody was hoping that I would, I'm not, because I usually keep my channel very anime limited. Even though this is anime derived and inspired, it's mostly American and Korean produced, so I don't see really a reason to produce on my channel. But if you want to follow me on my channel, I am ShuttleBlazer3000, where I do anime reviews and other anime related content and the occasional Let's Play. And if you always want to follow me on social media, follow me at Twitter at AlexJShort.
All right. And if you guys want to follow me, obviously you're on my channel right now, which is Drac2326. You can check out all the content that I provide on a weekly basis, whether it be World of Warcraft stuff, whether it be gaming content in general, Let's Play stuff like that. I also do game reviews, vlogs. I have a vlog on Castlevania, which needs to be amended a little bit because I did actually figure out my music issues, but there you go. You have it here. Maybe I'll just link them together in a playlist and you can get that. And then also you could follow me on Twitter at Drac2326. And I'm also, again, I'm going to emphasize because for the live chat, there is a particular status update that I made on Twitter today that I want retweeted as many times as possible in regards to the Alex Mauer situation. So please get out there. Please retweet it to your friends so that we can get the incompetence. Let's just put it that way. The incompetence of certain gaming media former giants. So with that, those are the ways to get a hold of me. If you want to get a hold of the podcast, the best way and the way that we recommend the most is going to geekyweek.podomatic.com. That's where our RSS feed is. If you guys want to get the episodes and be able to listen to them on your morning commute, that's the place to go, especially since it gives you the link to the iTunes page. And that's also how you can show your support for us by subscribing to the RSS feed. You can also send us stories for our weekly podcast, which happens every Friday night at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. You can email those at geekyweek@gmail.com. And we do take those listener stories in, and we do take you guys' feedback as well. And you can also follow us on social media. You can look us up on Facebook by looking up Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions and liking it. And also following us on Twitter at GeekyNRO. And you'll get up-to-the-minute information when we're going live, the stories we're going to be talking about, the bonus reviews we might do. All that stuff will be there. But that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this, even though YouTube was horribly broken for most of this episode. So I feel bad for those who are coming in for the live stream. But thank you so much for showing up anyway. And as for me, and for Alex, and for Romney, we will see you guys next week for even more geek news, reviews, and opinions. Give me the candle, chicken.